We'll soon start session number 4, that is on enabling ESG at grassroots with a mission to fight against climate change and to secure net zero by 2070. We need to enable an environment that makes ESG a people's movement. This panel will share their plans, experiences, case studies and key learnings on how to meet India's COP26 goals. So may I request the moderator, Mr. Arun Arora, Director of Chetak Foundation, to come on the dais. May I please request Mukundan Iyer, CEO Ultra Gas and Energy Limited, Madam Kiran Sarkar, Head Sustainability Mahindra and Mahindra, Automotive and Farm Business, Mr. Rishi Pathania, Corporate Head CSR UPL Limited, and Naved Ahmad, Co-founder Carbon Negative Company. Please take your seats on the dais, please. Over to you.
Are we not offering lunch to audience? Okay, great. Great. I'm Arun Arora. I am director with Chetak Foundation. I have an experience of about 3 decades working in various organizations, including Essar, Maruti Suzuki, Hindu Steel and Power, GMR Delhi Airport, GVK, Jain Oil and Gas, and Vedanta, and thereafter I joined Chetak Group. I'm heading their foundation and also, can you hear me? And also supporting in their strategic and communication requirement. I'm really thankful to Mr. Rusen, Kumar and India CSR for choosing me as a moderator. I'm sure Rusen Kumar is not very fond of Arnab Goswami because he wants me to moderate and he wants panelists to speak. Unlike in Arnab Goswami's show where no one gets to speak. There was one. Second is I also thought many people have not had their lunch, so maybe I'll start with some humor. But then I was really scared after the Will Smith Chris rock and roll episode. So I thought I'd come to the point. Now we have a illustrious set of panelists that are there with us. So the sequence that we're going to follow is we will introduce each one of them. And thereafter we will raise certain points relating to ESG. And I'll just request many of the people who are here, they are into CSR, ESG, and they also handle communication. I see there's a lot of lawyers' language in the language of ESG, CSR. Again, there are a lot of jargon being used. So I'll request in case we can simplify this, going back to basics. We have earth, all giving earth, all forgiving earth, gives us everything. Can we simply give it back to earth? Can we look at inclusive growth wherein we see that when we grow, our colleagues also grow? Basic, simple sustainability is when you grow together, when you accept, when you are accepting of others, when you are appreciating others, and when you're giving back to earth. So that will take care of a lot of problems. So we request our panelists to be very, very simple in their approach and language. That was one. And then one more point I wanted to make is when we speak, can we also look at first person as to what is that we can do instead of what is that others can do, what is that government can do, what is that system can do, what is that we can do to improve scenario at ESG. So first of all, we have Mr. Mukundan, who is CEO of Ultra Gas and Energy Limited. He has more than 3 decades of experience across industries and geographies. And prior to Ultra Gas, he was heading the on-site and merchant business for Linde Middle East and played a pioneering role in development of green hydrogen, ammonia and hydrogen refueling station across various government and private enterprises in the Middle East. Being an avid advocate for clean energy, smart city development and technology to uplift the quality of people's life, Mr. Mukundan has been passionate about deployment of cryogenic application technology across various industries towards energy saving and pollution reduction. He has served on the board of various companies and has worked with various investment projects with steel majors supporting building of air separation plants and hydrogen units across India and Middle East. He has worked in downstream carbon capture and utilization projects, enhancing recovery and fracking CO2 in the upstream petrochemical projects. In fact, that is something we have common. I work with Clean Oil and Gas, and we worked on fracking, and we worked on enhanced oil recovery. Now, I would like to introduce Mr. Naved Ahmad. Mr. Mukundan, can you raise hand? So we have Mr. Naved Ahmad, who's co-founder of Carbon Negative company, very interesting name. I'm sure he'll elaborate more on that. He's had a career in marketing, advertising, publishing, public relations, corporate social responsibility, social enterprise. You should leave something for us also. He's worked everywhere. Currently, he's focusing on bringing together businesses with development organization on CSR programs that create value for both. He's been an amazing copywriter with the advertising industry, and he set up his PR agency, and he's doing extremely well in that as well. Naved, can you please raise your hand? So we have Kiran, who's head sustainability for Mahindra and Mahindra's Automotive and Farm Business Division. Kiran is an environment graduate, and in fact, special request to you, because you are not only environment graduate, you are also environment law graduate. So you will be most acquainted with the kind of language we all use, so in case we can simplify in some fashion for us lesser mortal and common folks. And she's been working with Mahindra for almost 15 years now. It's a long career there. And she currently leads sustainability work at Mahindra and Mahindra. During her tenure with Mahindra, she's worked in various domains of sustainability across value chains. Kiran specializes in diverse portfolio of renewable energy, water and energy resource efficiency, watershed recharge management, waste minimization, recycling, enterprise risk and mitigation, carbon positive efforts, employees health and safety, road safety, environment assurance. She has expertise in ESG disclosures, reporting and rating. Have you left anything from that domain? Very interesting. She's a member of audit practitioners team of CII, so you know who to approach in case you're going for CII audit, who can help you there. And a member of working group of Fiki Water Mission, Western Region. She's been recognized as an emerging sustainability leader of the year by Sustainability Outlook magazine. And now we also have Rishi Pathania. He is corporate head CSR UPL Group. Rishi is working as head of CSR for UPL Group. He has spent 25 years. You can see all of them are veterans in the development space, largely around CSR and sustainability. Rishi is dividing the always human philosophy of UPL. Oh, that is very interesting. UPL's work for economic and social growth of the community started 50 years back. The company believes that humankind is one community where each member is responsible for the well-being of another. Very interesting, Rishi, very well thought of. So now, basically, our theme for the conference is enabling ESG at grassroots. So in fact, we've had a discussion prior to our meeting along with Rishi and Naved and Kiran and Mr. Mukundan, and we considered certain areas that we can touch upon. We are going to ask specific questions to people, and first of all, I'll request Mr. Mukundan to share a very interesting presentation that he's brought along. The broad area I just mentioned before I call you. One is, for instance, what is the objective? Objective basically is we have terms like COP26, wherein we have this community of partners of almost 196 countries who agreed on certain guidelines to be followed, and then we had to become carbon neutral by, some people say 2050, India says 2070. So there are various things that we're going to discuss, but let me invite Mr. Mukundan. He can share a presentation and then we can take it forward. Thank
you. Thanks, Arun, and yes, working. For your preamble, to keep the language simple to a technologist can be very challenging. So, coming from a graduate background, so I'll try and see how much I can do justice to that in terms of keeping the language. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And to give you a perspective, I think ESG, no doubt, is the future, and we have to do everything necessary now to make sure that our future is clean and we have for generations to come, we lead a high quality of life. So I think there's no denying this fact. Having spent a lot of time engaging with governments outside of India, I can quite easily see that the amount of intensity at which the rest of the world is progressing on that, and the way technology is galloping, the regulation is galloping ahead, I think the forum addresses a very critical point, which is how do we get this ESG at the grassroots level? Before I get there, I think just a small introduction about ultra gas, so that I'll lay the context as where we're going to head in the few slides ahead. Ultra gas is basically a clean tech company. We are in the business of providing clean energy to industries and commercial establishments. And that's really the goal, clean tech, which means providing clean energy. And our go-to product in this journey to start with is going to be liquefied natural gas. So when I say liquefied, that's where I'm going to get a little complicated with technology and so on and so forth. Starting with liquefied natural gas, I'll explain why it is liquefied natural gas later. Our vision is to start enabling customers to access green fuels such as hydrogen, such as green ammonia, so on and so forth. And ultimately, we would like to build our expertise in ensuring there is pollution control, flow stack reduction in terms of reducing the carbon footprint of many of our industrial customers. So that's really the context, right? And therefore, E for us is the most critical part of our vision, which is environment, and we are there to make sure that we can facilitate the decarbonization of the Indian economy. So that's really where we are. Can I move the slides? Is the one? Yeah, let me see. All right, so before I get to, we need to really understand what we mean by grassroots. Okay, so this is really the crux of the problem, right? So in the previous discussion, I think people talked about large industries having a very good ecosystem that sort of supports majority of the initiatives such as governance, etc. I think the MSMEs really represent a big chunk of our industrial footprint, and this MSME segment is huge, and that to me really is grassroots from an industrial point of view. So when I say why is it huge, it represents 34 to 40% of the economy, which is significant. But in terms of numbers, you can imagine for every one large industrial outlet, you can think about 100 to 200 MSMEs in terms of footprint. And these are not situated in just one cluster or in just one location. They are situated in literally, they're spread all over the country, and some of them are inaccessible, they're not easy to access, and they come with their own characteristics. And being MSMEs, and some of you who are from MSMEs, who interacted with MSMEs, are very typical characteristics. So they have challenges with respect to multiple issues. And I think in the previous discussion, people talked about profitability, people talked about economic cycles. This is the segment which is the most prone to economic cycles. There's still the ecosystem hasn't reached them when it comes to financing. The system has not geared for governance, so on and so forth. That's typically the system. I would say this segment, I would say it might be a very crude thing to say, but they are not well cared for from a majority of angles we see, and that's why it's important that we address this segment. And most of them use fuels for the industrial heating purposes, which are not clean. Now, this is a huge segment, and that affects the quality of our lives wherever we go. If I look at large industries, they have a beautiful system. They are willing to take those challenges. They have the agenda to change fuels, industrial heating requirements. They have all these things possible. We have somebody talked about, SEBI having a BRSR, reporting. They have beautiful sustainability programs. But this segment is very hard to get, a very consistent program going. So they all use fuels which literally pollute the atmosphere. And knowingly or unknowingly, they do that because they have no choice. Most important reasons for that is cost and access to those cleaner fuels. Now, in all my discussions with majority of these MSMEs, the only constant refrain is, look, we don't have access. It's either very expensive, it's not available. So it sort of bottlenecks them from going to the next step, and they are not happy about it. That's the point I'm saying. So, like I said, So we triangulate their requirement. I think the most important thing for them is cost, consistency, because they are not CapEx easy. So most of these MSMEs have a problem with CapEx. They don't have that much financial wherewithal to invest in the infrastructure to ensure there is an uninterrupted supply of fuel. And there is also a flexibility issue. So they struggle with having a flexible supply of fuel. Now, the objective of ultra gas is to basically make sure, and I'll say I won't use ultra gas as a point here. I think the most important point to address to the MSMEs is to make sure that the accessibility of clean energy is first of all available. I think fundamentally when you talk of going to the grassroots, I think we need to make sure that we make available clean energy to them available. When I say available, I could make a clean fuel available for a price which is very, very expensive, which is not going to solve the problem, right? So when you say access, we're going to make it available to them at a price and at a point which is easy for them to address and digest. I think if you look at the Indian context, the green fuel market is still not mature. Not only here, I think it's a problem rest of the globe, and there are people working on it. But generally speaking, green fuel market is yet to really take off, and it's going to be a while. It will happen because there is a lot of initiatives going on. But let's just face it, it's still expensive. When I talk about industrial heating, I'm not talking about solar, I'm not talking about electricity generation. I'm talking about environment which is getting polluted by carbon emitting fuels, right? Which is a significant part of the overall pollution component. And green fuels, while there is a lot of technology going on among us, among the industries, it is still not available for consumption. When I go to Europe, it's still expensive. It's expensive in Europe. It's still expensive in the US. Green hydrogen, there's a lot of talk about it, and I understand it's great. But ask me today, it's still not there, right? It's going to be at least 10, 15 years before we get that, right? But so what do we need? We need something which is sort of a transition before we get to green fuel, because we don't have that much time. So we need to start acting today so that by in 10, 15 years time, we have a situation well under control. So the point here is accessibility will start with a fuel which is going to be better than what you're using today and available at their doorstep at a price point which is easy for them to digest. I think that's the main point that I'm driving home here. So I talked about liquefied natural gas. So we all know about natural gas. Natural gas is nothing but methane, which is available, which is drilled out of the ground. It's Qatar and all of these countries have plenty of natural gas. And as per data, the availability of natural gas in the world is going to be tripling in the next 5 to 10 years. That's a clean fuel, and the technology that is now changing the world's landscape is cryogenic technology. Today, natural gas is actually liquefied natural gas in terms of cryogenics is nothing but a gas compressed at minus 192 to 162 degrees at 600 times its original volume, which means that you can literally carry 600 cylinders of gas in one cylinder, if I were to use a simple analogy. All the air in this room can be compressed into a small cylinder in the form of a liquid fuel, in the form of a liquid air. That's the cryogenic technology that's available today. And it makes a huge difference in the supply chain of fuels. Because if I were to transport so much air or so much gas, it's going to be really, really expensive. And that's why cryogenics technology, which is probably the most fastest growing technology in the fuel industry, is going to make a big difference to the industry as we see, because it's easier to store, we can transport this to longer distances, and make sure that industries get the benefit of this technology in order for them to reduce their carbon footprint. So just to give you a perspective in terms of what we are talking about here. If you look at natural gas, which is here, which is a green bar, it emits 21 kgs of CO2 per lakh kilocalories of fuel, right? And all the way up to wood, which is 46. So if you look at all the other fuel which is stacked next to each other, we are talking about natural gas being currently the most cleanest fuel, and every other fuel, starting from LPG, which is 16% more CO2 emitting, kerosene, which is more CO2 emitting, all the way up to wood, which is 54%. If you triangulate this whole MSME industry, you'll be surprised to know majority of them are actually in the diesel, furnace oil, coal section. And that is about, I'd say, 40% of the Indian economy. And the regulator, in terms of ecosystem that's available for them to shift, is either expensive or not even available. Because we are talking about somebody who's 500 kilometers from a small town in Chennai, from a town away from Chennai, and pipelines are not going to reach there. And there is an industry there which is fully utilizing the coal available next door and polluting it. And if you ask me frankly, they do need clean fuel, but that's not accessible yet. Now we talked about the pollution component of the CO2 emission component of various fuels. Here's the interesting part. If you look at the natural gas, which is LNG, if you look at energy density point of view, you will see the highest energy density, which is 13,000 kilocalories per gram, right? Which is huge. And if you look at all the fuels, they all stack lower than natural gas. So there was a statement made by a minister the other day that Indian economy currently is at about 6% penetration of natural gas. The government wants it to become 15%, which means that's the kind of incentive, that's the kind of focus the government is having. And rightfully, LNG stacks right there because that's the kind of fuel which is highly efficient and least polluting from a comparison to all other fuels you have. Now, this is the important part of why we think LNG as a technology is going to transform the profile of the Indian MSME market. If you look at this, this is the way LNG will be delivered to every customer across the country. It is agnostic to size and location. So anyone in the country can have access to LNG simply because LNG is transported in the liquid form from the terminal to all the way to the customer. If you look at this way, the LNG is transported through road tankers. There is a terminal in India. There are 4 terminals in India already. And if I remember correctly, there are 4 more being under considerations in several forms. And if you look at China, they have 22. India is right now at 4, and therefore Indian government is focusing on building this infrastructure. And from there, putting road tankers which are fitted with cryogenic storage tanks, you can deliver LNG all the way to the customer so that he uses the same natural gas in the most effective way and put on top the digital solutions of tracking and reordering, etc., etc. And India, is extremely competent when it comes to digital technology. It's really this is really having double whammy with the customer. Now, this little slide talks about why LNG is going to be so crucial and why is it so different from the rest of the fuels. I think this is the technological aspect of this paradigm which is yet not understood, I'll say, and probably this is something that we have to open up for a discussion. The pipe distribution of natural gas can only get to some place. It can't penetrate all of India. It's going to be very expensive. It's time consuming. It took about 10 years for the country to have about 10,000 kilometers of pipeline, which is only 6% of the penetration of industries. 6%. 10,000 kilometers of pipeline laid by different CGD networks, different government entities. Whereas we can be very sharp with LNG because LNG can go any part of the country with just a truck distance, right? And with a storage tank there, it can meet any requirement. So it's very sharp, and it's faster and deeper and cheaper, simply because it avoids compression, decompression, several other costs associated with it. On a total cost of ownership basis, you'll see that LNG is far cheaper compared to pressurized gas. So the other thing is, we got to look at how do we facilitate these MSMEs in adopting this. So I think someone needs to step forward and say that we will take the capex, because I think MSMEs have this innate problem with capex. And I think from our side, I think our objective and vision is to absorb that capex. And I'm sure once this business becomes bigger, it'll probably be the norm, and we'll be very happy to lead that, pioneer that, and there'll be more and more companies coming forward. But I think the most important aspect here is, as a vision, we want to provide capex to MSMEs so that they don't have that problem of having to fund for an infrastructure to get clean fuel. So I'm just going back to this basic statement that we've seen someone talk about UPIs before, right? It transformed the country. People thought, digital finance will never be the day, will never be possible. And when I came back from the US, when I came back from Middle East, I was shocked to see the level of penetration in India. It's just astounding, right? I didn't even think that this is possible. And but that's possible. We've seen the success. And I think with a lot of vision, with a lot of commitment, delivering clean fuels to the grassroots is eminently possible. I think I will end with that. And when they embrace the principle and we're there as facilitators to that, I think ESG will be a reality with the grassroots. Thank you so much.
very well articulated, Mr. Mukundan. And I really like your example of Paytm. You know, if you time it well with demonetization, you can succeed anyway. You time it very well. Thanks, but amazing. Mr. Mukundan, we'll come back to you with some questions. Let me also induct a couple of other colleagues here. So let me start with Kiran, who's been heading this function for a long time. So I'll ask you a very simple question, Kiran. How important are the roles of innovation and scale of impact to drive the sustainability projects? So let's begin with that. But I have some provoking questions for you, Mr. Mukundan, after you go with this.
Yeah, thank you. So since morning we are hearing about ESG, the role of ESG, and I think let's be optimistic also from the perspective of, how the India has developed in this field of, and I'm talking about the E part. So we had decided that target of 20% renewable, and we have already crossed that target. We are planning to 50% renewable country by 2030, which is kind of a great target for a country like India with such a population. So I want to take this view and, let's see that, there are problems. There are this 1.5 degree, 2 degree. These are hovering issues, and it's a sword that is on our head. But yes, everybody is working towards it in their own capacity. So I think let's give the credit the way government is also working. And from corporate perspective, I want to talk about is, just don't think that it is something which is not possible, and it is something which is it's kind of a ball that we just know when it will burst or something like that. But what I think is a small solution. I want to give a very simple example of, say, LED lighting, which is a very, very simple example. And when I'm talking about scale of impact, when we started doing the LED lighting as a program, and at that time Ujala program with the government with energy, this Ministry of Power, it was a very simple that efficient lighting karna, nothing else. It's a very simple program. But how we have derived it, all our location across India have shifted at the same time to the LED lighting. We took this program to our, all the MSMEs and supplier partners, and my 131 supplier, more than 131 suppliers have already shifted to the LED lighting. Same program we have taken to the dealership and distributor network where they are selling cars. So there the entire thing is shifted to LED. Then we took it to the employees and their families and communities. So see, the one simple idea that is LED lighting, and it has covered the entire stakeholders beyond my boundary and the community as well. So I'm saying that there are simple solutions available. We have to take that perspective, take simple ideas, small ideas, and take a step ahead. And we are talking about net zero, but so there are a lot of companies have also committed net zero. But I want to say today is we are not equipped with the technology of that kind to become a net zero business, at least at this point of time, because Mukundan spoke about green hydrogen, right? And wherever I go, I get the question of electrical vehicle, right? So just to give a perspective on the EV is going to pollute more if the grid does not change into renewable, because ultimately you are shifting IC engine to EV, and it's just you're shifting from one fuel to another. So EV is not going to help if the grid is not renewable. So EV is not the solution. EV is not the only solution, but the infrastructure around it is solution. So net zero is a bigger game, and it is not going to, we will not achieve it from the simple and whatever we are doing right now, but there will be innovative solutions which will come in the picture. But I think collaboration is the key word for net zero, because companies like Mukundan's company, and then there are some other players are working in this direction. So we have to collaborate for each and everything, for different innovation, technologies, everything, so that we can achieve the net zero target. So I think basic funda is innovation, collaboration, and the scale of impact. We can go ahead with.
Okay, very interesting, Kiran, thanks. That brings me to a question which is common to both Mukundan and you. You mentioned about EVs and how you're going to shift the pollution from the roads to maybe wherever the electricity is being produced, supposing they are using coal. Now, that is what I was referring to the question that I wanted to ask you also. I'm not sure how much is the gas reserve that India has, but as regards coal is concerned, we have huge reserves of coal. Okay, and internationally, all the countries have gone through their industrial cycle, and maybe we are at a stage when we can either let go of whatever coal is lying underneath and stick to the curse of natural resources theory, like for its African countries or some of the states that we have here, Jharkhand, Bihar, Odisha, which has huge reserves of coal. Should we use coal, maybe bring some tech which can convert coal to gas, for instance, that is one option, or some other technology so that we use coal, why let go of that coal also? Instead of making coal such a dirty word, why don't we focus some energy investment efforts there? So I would like to have both your comments.
Very good question. This challenge has been there to a lot of even developed economies. So I'll give you an example in Japan. The largest blue ammonia consumption is targeted to be in Japan. And you've asked me where they're using it. They're actually using it in coal-fired plants. So the answer to reducing coal may not be a short-term solution because you're not going to achieve that. Like she correctly said, it has to be, you cannot neutralize coal and it's just not a switch you can turn on. Right? So it has to happen over phases.
Sure.
And the first step would be to, can we replace, can we substitute, can we, co-inject a fuel which is cleaner, which is blue ammonia or green ammonia. And there's enough and more, solar power, there's enough and more wind power through which we can produce green hydrogen. So Japan is pioneering a lot of technologies into using green hydrogen in the form of green ammonia into the power plants. That is one. The other area, of course, so the first answer to that is you got to try and see, can we reduce the quantum of coal being used instead of saying, can we go to zero? Because it's just not happening, right? The other aspect is that when you use coal and whatever pollutants that come out of coal, can we capture them and can we, let's say, find a home for them rather than letting them out in the air, which is all about the carbon capture thing, which is probably a more circular way of looking at it. It's probably more expensive, but no harm in trying that. Right now, a lot of pilots that have happened globally are all large-scale pilots, which is good, but I think quietly there are a lot of companies in the US, startups, who are looking at mini-scale carbon capture systems. I understand the Japanese are leading this game. And that's where I think we got to focus on. Can we try and do something about the pollution that comes out, CO2 that comes out? And then in addition to that, we look at how do we substitute some of coal into that. In terms of coal gasification, there is opportunity, but it's yet tested. So from a technological point of view, that's my key answer.
Sure. Do you want to add something before we move on to?
No, actually he has covered the points. But yes, the carbon capture market is going to be the future that maybe Naved would like to talk more on it because it's a subject, but yes. So that's the future that's what I'm saying. So net zero, when you have to become net zero, you can't think in one direction. You have to have different solutions because we are going to, and the businesses have to change. So there is an opportunity aligned to this. Right, so business have to explore in different opportunities, and maybe I'll talk more on this in the next subject maybe, but yeah.
Sure. Okay, now let me move from tech to something emotional, which Rishi is very fond of speaking about. So what can the companies adopt to protect communities and natural habitats? So this is something that Rishi is something very close to Rishi's heart, and natural habitats are significantly depleted. So would you like to touch upon that?
In fact, I was just thinking it's a bit of a misfit talking about that here right now, but still I'll do that. Because even if you see the discussion that's happening since morning, it's around the business, it's around the growth. But I think we're not taking a pause and just thinking how this can be an inclusive growth. And even COP26, whenever we talk about more objective, we tend to missing the second one, which is around the community and the ecosystem. I think we are more around how do you really manage 100 billion or something like that, that numbers. But I think it's very important to focus on that part. We will not be able to achieve our our COP26 goal if we're not focused on that. Primarily because I think it's an issue of social and physical resilience that we really want to build in the community. And if we talk about social and physical resilience, I think it boils down to the 4 important focus area. It's restoring your ecosystem, working on livelihood, whether it's food security, working on health. The pandemic has taught us this is not something that you can really ignore. The last one is building infrastructure which can really take care of the climate change. But when I take a step back and when I just reflect on what was taught to me 25 years back when I was a student, in a very raw language I was taught about Jal, Jameen, Jan, Janwar, Jungle, so 5 J's. And when you take a back step, every framework is talking about same. So we are essentially missing out on something and just putting different frameworks to understand what more needs to be done. Where it's very simple, you have to just focus on the 5 J's, that's all. From a company perspective, we are really trying to focus our best how we can really address that missing link of restoring the ecosystem. We have picked up few species, we are working on conservation of that. Saras is one species from India which is like, was into a continuous decline state. So we have picked up that species, we are working very hard on it for the last 6-7 years. Very proud to say that we have almost kind of doubled that species in the last 5 years. Now we have taken up vulture also, we have added Saras. That's an indigenous crane from India. Normally our tendency is to go for the exotic migratory birds, but our own species was into a continuous decline. It was like almost 0. Earlier it was from Afghanistan till Indonesia, but it's now including 2 pockets. One is Kheda, Gujarat, and the second one is Mainpur, UP. It's completely wiped out from other places. So working on conservation of that, we're working on conservation of vultures. Again, I don't have to tell much about that, everyone knows the way it's diminishing. We are working on social forestry with the community, and I'm not talking about the forestry that we have to do in the factory as a part of the legislation of greening, but you're working with the community, and it's a very long-term project. You have to really work very hard with the community to create forest. It's a 6-year project from sapling to forest. We have created more than 200 acres of that. We are working on mangrove plantations around coastal areas. We are working on creating a batch of students who are sensitized to ecology and environment. This is a part of a larger project that we call Vasudha. Vasudha means Mother Earth, giver of everything to us. Why I'm flagging this off? If I really look back and just see how many corporates are focusing on this kind of approach, I've got only on fingers. I'm not saying other issues are not important. In countries like India, education is very important, working on livelihood is very important, but this is not something that we can really miss on, especially now that climate change is hitting all of us on our face. It's no more a topic where we were thinking ki aaj hoga, kal hoga, parso hoga. It has reached us. It has reached everyone. So my submission is, it's a good idea to talk about growth in business and other things from different lenses, but let's not forget the basics. That's important for us to achieve the COP26 goal for all of us. That's my submission.
Rishi, very, very thoughtful action. I think let me just raise a disruptive point here. It's for the entire audience also. When would the human species learn to let live other species?
Exactly.
You know, we tend to be very kind-hearted. We set a zoo for them, we breed them, but why touch them? Let them be. They deserve to be free, isn't it? You know, but the effort that we're making is amazing because this is far better. Politically incorrect, but we all claim to be so-called goshalas and all that. As soon as the cow stops giving milk, they abandon it, and they'll kill the bullock. This is so unfortunate. So, as human species, high time we learn to let other species be. God has created a life cycle for them, and they'll happily survive. Or even if they don't survive, that is part of the food cycle. But high time we learn to be. Okay, again, Naved is staring at me. How come you're not talking to me at all? So Naved, very interesting for you. What models do you think will work best in the Indian context, focusing on ECG, ESG, investments that can create multiplier effects leading to scale? For instance, we're talking about the grassroots. Grassroots, we have to go deeper. Another simple question, maybe any one of you can attempt answering. We talk of CSR and a lot of corporates, some of the corporates we work with, including Vedanta, we have Roma here from Vedanta. We also encourage the concept of ISR, that was individual social responsibility, wherein we encourage each employee to indulge in some kind of social activities over the weekends. So similarly, ESG, in case we have to go to grassroots, do you think there is a case for encouraging each employee to indulge into some kind of ESG activities, starting with maybe parents teaching their children to be responsible when it comes to cycling, recycling, reusing their stuff? Where do we stand?
Very difficult the way you've put it, because which comes first? Individual responsibility, corporate responsibility, social responsibility, who is responsible for what? If we look at the problem is going to hit us, everybody in this room has been saying since morning, in the face. Environment degradation has reached a tipping point where it is no longer possible for us to continue business as usual. Right? Everything is changing. So how do we stop that or reverse it? There's only one thing in the world that talks, and that's money. Wherever the money flows, there the effort goes. So what we have to do is we have to look at the whole problem in a way. Does it make money for the person who's working at it or not? If it makes money for the farmer, for the rickshawala, for the small shopkeeper, then there will be effort in that direction. If it doesn't, no matter how much money Tatas or Mahindras or anybody pumps in, it's not going to change anything. So what we have to do is, and I will give you our example, what we are doing. We are, like Rishi said, ecosystem restoration is a huge challenge. Right? 1/3 of India's land is degraded. There's nothing that grows there. There's no productivity, no water, no vegetation. It's lost. It's like Pakistan came and took it away. Right? And that is a huge challenge in front of us. But CSR money is not going to restore it. Business money will restore it. Right? So what do we do to bring business money to it? We have to build business models that utilize that land. Right? So I was speaking to Kiran before we started this discussion, and so the model that we are working on is there is already a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. Right? We need systems to capture that. The CCS technology is very premature, very expensive right now. Natural systems are cheaper, much cheaper. And we have the land to do it. We don't have to compete with food land, land that grows food. You can take degraded land, right? Every village has degraded land. So first, design a business model that captures large-scale carbon through natural systems. Grow bamboo, 17 tons per hectare every year, right? Grow things that do that. Don't do repetitive crops, do perennial crops. Don't use tractors, so you will save soil, right? Simple things. Use crops that are not water intensive, right? Like Pongamia, for example, right? Pongamia, it's a tree indigenous to India, right? It produces a bean which has more oil than palm oil and more protein than soya, right? Per hectare. And monetize it. Monetize it for the farmer who's growing it, monetize for the communities who are engaged in its. And all these systems are available to us. We have to connect the market to the grower. Right? We have to build a business model where all these crops, tree crops, so you don't have to till, there is no carbon emission in growing. You've got a 30-year window to harvest it. Right? You never have to put another dime into it to sustain it. All you have to do is take care of it. Right? So while we do work with the forest department in Karnataka to restore degraded forests, and we're doing that as a pilot right now. But what is important is that we build a business model that drives money into it so that money can be generated from it. So you capture the carbon, you create livelihoods, which is a big climate change consequence. Right? And you substitute products that are high carbon emission. Right? So you do these three things on a large scale, you will get to your goal. I'm not saying this is the only way, but this can be a major pillar on which we can build.
Very, very thoughtful and perceptive views. Naved, thanks. That gives me a couple of other thoughts that come to mind. I had read about very, very indigenous solutions and ideas. For instance, you pick up barren land. If you drive through one state to another, for kilometers together, you see no farming, barren land. And also a lot of water bodies, including some rivers. On the barren land, you are in this sector, and especially for logistics, we can build up huge warehouses there, and on the roof we can put solar panels. Okay, such a simple solution. Barren land, no one is doing anything. Whoever owns it, give them whatever is written on power produced and whatever is the rentals from the logistics companies. There was one. Second is, Mukundan, I just wanted to ask you, you are in this sector, and in this sector, however good we may be, we eventually lead to pollution. Similarly, we are into logistics and are into automobiles, and since we are into this line, we produce, we create pollution. So at Chetak Logistics, we ensure that we focus on two broad areas. One is pollution control, environment control. Second is road safety, because logistics also leads to road accidents. There is no denying the fact that in case you have thousands of lorries operating on roads, there will be some kind of. So what is that you do at Ultra Gas when it comes to taking beyond the corporate structure? Because I remember there's someone from, in the previous panel, someone who's from CI. Okay, now, there are policies, quality policies, there are CSR policies, there are ESG policies which are pasted on the shop floor. Some people remember it, but if there is an audit by CI or some rating agency, then employees are encouraged to remember it in case somebody comes, some auditor comes. So what efforts do we make to include employees? That is what I was referring to when we say let us simplify communication. Are we including employees as a base so that they become part of the campaign, ESG campaign? Would you like to share some examples from your organization, and then maybe we can ask Kiran and others also.
Specifically from Ultra Gas perspective, I think the essential part of any, we have two policies which are fundamental to, which is part of the DNA. I think that's why I'm in the organization, and so are everybody else. I think the first thing is safety. Absolutely. Safety is a condition of employment. Because when we deal with hazardous substances, and then fundamental to valuing human life. You say condition of employment, it's not letting them fire. It's just that anybody who's working for an organization such as ours, I think they have to invite the fact that they can cause harm to others by virtue of them not having the skills or knowledge in dealing with hazardous products or flammable substances. So I think that's fundamental. Just in the same breath, I think if you don't have passion for going green, it makes no sense for you to be in the industry. I think that goes back to the point you made. So I think I think these two are critical. So I think I'm sure I'm seeing most organizations value this right at the time of interviewing candidates, etc., etc. Some people may not have the education. That goes back to the point you talked about individual social responsibility.
Great. Yeah.
I think you should start early.
Great.
I think we got to start right at the school level and build that sort of mindset that it's not okay to pollute the atmosphere.
Sure.
It's not okay to littering the place.
Sure.
It's fundamental. So you start there, and then when you make conditions of employment such as this, unless you have the passion, you can't get on the bus. It's something that you would probably be more, let's say, more accustomed to getting your, sort of the right employee.
Sure.
So that's what we do. And on top of that, I think we have a lot of initiatives. Because we are green, we also want to make sure that people have the passion. So we encourage our family, our employees' family also to understand. We run training programs. So I think these are stuff we do so that people appreciate, where we are. I think the passion and the vision should be equally shared among everybody.
Aligned, yeah, absolutely. Very good. I'll share a very interesting example of, again, one of the previous companies that I worked with, Vedanta, Cane Oil and Gas. It spoke of catching them young, inducting them early. When GETs and MPs, they get hired, usually in most companies, they work for 1 year in various functions. They go to sales, marketing, operations, finance. We also send them to CSR. We send them to villages to work at Nandghar projects. So this is kind of sensitizing them to CSR and ESG. So I think this thing. Kiran, one question that you are keen, that you wish to talk about, how is the sustainability projects helping improving bottom line, that is return on climate changes and ESG from investors' perspective? Just touch upon that and then we move on. We've been threatened to wind up now.
Yeah. So see, that's what I was saying. Let's be a little bit optimistic around it, because climate change has given a lot of opportunity. Like post-COVID also, we have got a lot of opportunities, and these are opportunities. These are for livelihood of everyone, and plus for the business per se. So just to give example from Mahindra's perspective, all the renewable energy projects, renewable power projects, and the thing is, if you see how we can get to the bottom line. So one project I want to mention is green power. This year we are saving 40 crores power cost only with the green power. Right, so that's the kind of bottom line impact all the green projects have. They have IRR, very good IRR. The payback is less than 18 months, less than 12 months also. So these are the kind of sustainability projects that are directly impacting the bottom line. And if you see at the board also, people are realizing this, right? And they understand the value in ESG and sustainability per se, how it is impacting the bottom line. The conversion cost of power and fuel, we could reduce so much. It has helped the total conversion cost of per vehicle, which is a huge impact directly integrating into the bottom line. And another example I want to give regards to the opportunity is, so there is a huge issues dwelling around the end of life of vehicle or end of life of products or PR per se. So Mahindra Zero is company who is into the eco-friendly recycling of the vehicles. So I'm saying that these are the kind of business opportunities which are coming up with climate change. So there are last mile mobility solutions. So these are the kind of a business that we are getting into, and I think we should look at this climate change in sense of they are providing us opportunity to disrupt his business in a different direction. So that's my take on it for the climate change.
Thank you. I think that is quite perspective. Kiran, now finally just share one example before we wind up. A couple of things. One, I request all of us here and all of us in the audience, we commit to ourselves that we'll do something to aid ESG and we'll do individual ESG also, individual CSR also. I'll share a very small example. We work with this organization called Chetak Logistics. We are into hauling automobile vehicles in big trailers across the city, and 10,000 drivers work directly with us, and we have another 10,000 who are contracted. Now, like Rishi mentioned, the case of inclusion, essentially what we're doing is, one, we are taking care of the welfare of the drivers. We tied up with this organization called Vision Screen. We are testing their eyesight, and we are providing them free spectacles, and we propose to touch 1 million drivers over the next 5 years, wherein we'll check their eyesight and provide free spectacles that will take care of their health, as well as they'll make them more employable, and they'll make roads safer for public at large. That is one. Second is, more than that, welfare most of the companies take care of, but we also working on according respect to this community. For instance, truck drivers are berated by cops across, they're harassed by people, no one respects them. So we're working with cops, we're working with various organizations where we can train so that these communities also respected. So that is what I was talking about, inclusion, and I think Rishi is bubbling with some ideas.
Just a kind of a closing remark or maybe a statement that I want to make.
Sure.
I think it's important that we don't forget ecosystem restoration. I'm coming again and again. And also my submission is that this is a little long-term investment and a long-term commitment. It can't be done in 1 year.
Sure.
I think Naved put it very nicely.
Sure.
CSR will not be able to do that. Business has to come in. Essentially, you need a return. It's a long-term thing that whether you call it an individual social responsibility or corporate social responsibility or a social responsibility, commitment has to be there. Long term, you really want to work on an ecosystem restoration. That was my submission, because it's important to keep that in mind. It's not something to get ROI in quarter or a year or 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. CSR, inclusion, ESG, they all add to the bottom line. They all add to your reputation. They all add to your brand equity. In simple. Any questions from the audience? We must be really good. There are no questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for bearing with us. Thank you, Mr. Mukundan, Kiran, Rishi, Naved. Excellent inputs. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful discussion and such a wonderful panel. May I please request Rusen Kumarji to felicitate the guests one by one, please. May I request the audience to give a big round of applause. Yes, the clappings must continue. May I request all the panel members to have a group photograph, please. Group photograph. Thank you once again, all the panel members and the moderator, please.